Project Zomboid is a great PC game, mostly meant to be played on keyboard and mouse, but did you know that you can also play it with a controller? Welcome pals to Vivi's Doodled World, and today, how to play on controller in Project Zomboid, plus some controller tricks. So mostly this video is meant to give you an idea of what playing on a controller is like if you haven't tried it yet. I've played with over 20 other people in this game, and they all use the keyboard and mouse, so from my perspective, there's a lot of you out there. You might also be wondering, why even consider a controller? You play on keyboard and mouse and it works just fine for you. Plus, given the fact that Project Zomboid is a simulation game, there's a lot of buttons to map. How do you even fit all these into this? Seems downright impossible. Well, take it from someone that's exclusively played on a controller, it is very viable. It has its advantages and disadvantages, the easiest to point out being the analog movement, which is great. But what I like the most about the controller is the comfort. As gamers, I imagine we don't often think about this because we just want to play. But really, when you use keyboard and mouse, you're pretty much in T-Rex arms all the time. Your wrists are darting around your table, all the while that dreaded carpal tunnel syndrome might be setting in. On a controller, you're mostly using your fingers, and I imagine the only time you'll wildly swing your arms is when you get bitten. So yeah, comfort is, in my opinion, the best selling point for using a controller in Project Zomboid. So how do you set it up? Actually very simple. You plug your controller in and play. I haven't had any big problems with any of the 4 controllers I've used, and I did use both wired and wireless setups. The simplest to use are X-input controllers, like the Xbox controller, but you can also use Dualshock 4 and Nintendo Joycons. The button prompts in-game are for Xbox inputs. If you want to play with a PS4 controller, you can change the button prompts with the mod Dualshock 4 icons. It may look old because it hasn't been updated in quite a while, but it still works. Also, if you play it wired, you can even use the headphone jacks on the controller, though you may need to tweak Windows audio settings for this one. Using 2 Joy-Cons requires a tiny bit more effort, but it works just fine in the end. Each side of the Joy-Con will have to be paired to your PC via Bluetooth, and you'll need to set up Better Joy so a pair can be read as a single controller. Install the drivers required for Better Joy inside this included folder. Start this app named Better Joy for CMU, and then make sure it looks like this. If it looks like this, just click on one of the controllers to change the setup. From my testing, if you have multiple Bluetooth devices connected to your PC, you might experience some input lag on the Joy-Cons. Now that we're all set, let's look at playing the game. I'll be using Xbox notations cause it's the default. The left stick is for moving your character, and by itself you'll face the direction you're walking towards, just like when using the keyboard. Pressing the left stick toggles sneaking and crouching. The right analog stick is used for looking around without moving, and pushing it towards any direction will also initiate combat stance and enable strafing and weapon attacks. Essentially, you have a twin stick setup here. Indeed, the analog sticks are the biggest gameplay advantage of controller usage, cause the direction you move is fully analog, not like the 8-way on WASD. Let's look at the face buttons. A is the confirm button, so you use this to select menu items in the inventory and other stuff. It's also a quick interact button, for example opening doors and windows, entering cars, toggling light switches, turning on microwaves. The B button is for cancelling out of menu items. It's also for agility actions like climbing through windows and fences. We also use it to sprint, we'll look at running later. Unlike on the keyboard, you only have to tap B once in front of a high fence to climb it, there's no need to hold the button. The X button opens the context menu. This is like pressing right click on your mouse, but only right in front of you. For example, if you want to fill up your water bottle, go up to a sink, press X, then select fill. Another example, go next to a corpse, press X and you can pick it up. Finally, the Y button toggles your inventory interface. And let's take a look at that right now. A and B still serves as your confirm and cancel respectively, but pressing B also expands an item's listing, like so. Left and right on the D-pad will switch between the inventory and loot container panels. You switch between your bags with the left bumper and surrounding containers with the right bumper. Up and down on the D-pad moves through inventory items. And finally, the most friendly button you'll be using is X, which is a shortcut to transfer an item from left to right and vice versa. As your inventory grows, this interface becomes much more cumbersome with the controller, but it's not unmanageable. And you can always revert to your mouse in sort of like a hybrid setup. And I'm sure you've noticed that the Windows covers so much more of the screen in comparison to using a keyboard. It's to the point that it's obscuring your character. You can still resize it with the mouse, but annoyingly it resets every time you load the game in. I'm hoping the default size is reduced to at least let us see our character, and the way to scroll more quickly through your items would be nice too. Maybe map it to pressing the right stick because as of the making of this video, it does absolutely nothing. Let's get back to exploration and look at what the shoulder buttons do. The left and right bumper by themselves do nothing, but the right bumper allows you to look around while in combat stance. The further you push the right stick, the further the camera moves. In neutral, the left trigger is your bare-handed attack. This is your quick shove/stomp button. And the right trigger is your run button. Hold it while moving to start running. To sprint, tap the B button while running, and then tap it again to return to a run. You can also start off sprinting by holding right trigger and B before moving. Now, let's take a look at combat. As previously said, combat stance is initiated by pushing the right stick in any direction. Left trigger is still your bare-handed attack, as well as right trigger if you're unarmed. If you have a weapon equipped, right trigger is your weapon attack. If you attack near a down zombie, you'll do prone attacks. Now, one downside here is there's no way to manually attack downwards on a controller. Well, actually there is, you hold left alt on the keyboard, but by then what's the point? For firearm-specific actions, left bumper is to rack your weapon. Press this when your weapon gets jammed. Right bumper is reload. If all your clips are empty, you'll automatically start loading one of them with ammo. Finally, holding right bumper for a second pops up a radial menu. This gives you an inventory-free way to load your magazines. Plus, if you want to shorten the hold time, check this box in the game's accessibility options. You can still tap to quick reload, but the window is very short, so be quick to let go. Now that we've mentioned the radial menu, let's discuss how it works. All radial menus are opened by holding down the button. To select an option, you have to be pushing the right stick towards that direction before releasing the button. It takes some getting used to, but it works fine. We discussed that first because the next part, the D-pad, is all radial menus. The most useful is the left D-pad button, as this allows you to quick equip any weapon in your inventory. And yes, it's any weapon, even if it's not attached to somewhere in your body. It's also here that you can quick equip and toggle flashlights in your offhand. This is another advantage of the controller. In keyboard and mouse, you're limited to up to 5 shortcuts. Your back weapon, 2 on your belt, and up to 2 holstered pistols. In my opinion though, keyboard and mouse users should also get this radial menu. I don't see a reason why it should be controller exclusive. The right D-pad button opens a radial menu for map options. You can check your map here or tinker with the minimap if it's enabled. Down on the D-pad is your social interactions. This is where you'll find the shout command. Note that most of the options open another radial menu. To refocus on it, you have to hold down on the D-pad again and move the right stick. Up on the D-pad opens a radial for vehicle interactions, and this one is context-based. The options available to you will change depending on certain situations, but all of it is related to vehicles, including switching seats, hot wiring, adjusting the AC, attaching a tow line, turning on the light bar, you get the idea. Start brings up the pause menu. I don't know what else to say, it's as simple as that. The back button, however, opens a radial menu for other various functions, so let's check them out. Firstly, it lets you open 2 important panels, the player info to check your health and stats, and the crafting menu. Second, it contains your zoom and fast forward functions. You can also quickly toggle foraging from here. Lastly, it enables, what do I call this? Furniture mode? Or whatever, let's tackle the various interfaces right now. So some of the buttons change function depending on the active interface, and let's start with furniture mode. While in this mode, the D-pad moves the cursor around, and Y recenters the cursor to you. The left bumper brings up a radial menu of possible object actions. There's pick up, place, disassemble, and rotate. The right bumper cycles through objects, or if in rotate or place mode, the orientation of the object. On to foraging. As I just said, you can enable foraging with the back button, but to open the investigate window, you have to do so via the context menu. From here, you can change your search focus with the left bumper. The D-pad moves the window around, but this isn't very helpful. I'd rather use the mouse. This window doesn't have to be open to forage, but you do have to go to it every time you want to change your search focus. Crafting, I sometimes manage to use it, but honestly, don't even bother with this one. Even on keyboard and mouse, I think this is a mess. There are too many recipes to scroll to one at a time, and you have to use the keyboard to search for recipes anyway. If you already know the recipe to an item, you can craft it via the inventory and context menus instead. When inside a vehicle, right trigger is your accelerate. Plus, if the car is off, it's an ignition shortcut. Although the UI says B is brake, that's only half correct. Left trigger is your actual brakes, and also reverse. B is actually your handbrake. If you want to do drifts, this is the button for you. If you have a weapon equipped, you can do drive-by attacks with the right stick plus right trigger. However, it does overlap with accelerating, so it's not very intuitive. Finally, X is assigned to cruise control. You first have to adjust your cruise speed by holding X and pressing up or down in the D-pad. Then, tapping X will turn cruise control on or off. If you want to shut off your vehicle, you'll have to use the Radial menu from pressing up on the D-pad. There are some more interfaces that I won't go over here because they're really simple, like the oven, heater, etc. But I do want to briefly mention the interfaces for radios and TVs. It's what's a good word to describe it? Ah yes, I got it, it is complete trash. Like, let me ask you, what buttons do you think you press to adjust the TV's volume here? What's that? Did you say left and right on the D-pad? Well, you're wrong, it's A and B. How dare you make that mistake? The last button we'll look at is pressing the left stick. If you hold it for half a second, you'll get a unique radial menu. Two of them are kinda useless since it just toggles crouching and sitting. You can do those options by other means. But this option here toggles auto walk, which makes your character move without using the left stick. You can even make it an auto run if you hold right trigger, or maybe combat stance with the right stick. You wanna grind nimble a bit easier? Here you go. Still, do note that the only way to stop auto walk is via the same radial menu. I think this is a feature unique to controller users, but in its place we lose the walk to function, even if we use the mouse, so this is kinda like its replacement. Unlike walk to, however, you won't auto-navigate through trees and you'll still snag them when you go through, so it's inferior in losing hordes through the woods. But if you have a long walk ahead of you or you're kiting zombies, this might prove useful. That's pretty much all of the controls, but we're not done yet. Let's get into how to execute some tricks on the controller. First, the controller's pseudo walk function, because there's still a way to get almost the same benefit, and that's by using furniture mode. Place an item in the woods, and your character will walk to the cursor, avoiding trees along the way. The difference here is you need to be carrying an item in your inventory that can be placed. I have my candidate for the best thing to carry around for this trick, but I want you to figure out your own best item, I won't tell you mine. And the only limitation here is your character will only walk, even if you press right trigger. But you can always just transition into manual movement with the left stick. Next is the stomp cancel. I already explained how to do this in my other video, but here's another one. You press left trigger to stomp while both sticks are pushed, then in a quick motion do these actions in order. Release the right stick to neutral, press right trigger, this initiates running, then push both the right stick and left trigger to do a stomp. You can keep both triggers held down after pressing them during the motion, but in order to do another cancel, you have to let go of them both. Next up is a trick called pistol whipping, as coined by Zomboid YouTuber Retanaru. To do this, you have to equip a firearm. Yeah, it works with shotguns and rifles, so maybe firearm whipping is a better name. You then have to initiate a push while moving. And if you cancel it with a run right at the beginning with the animation, you will end the push early but will still get the shove. This is the hardest trick to pull off in controller because of a limitation. While you're moving with controller inputs, tapping left trigger won't do anything. That doesn't make the trick impossible though. How it's executed here is with a negative edge. If you're unfamiliar with this fighting game term, it's when you execute a move by releasing a button instead of pressing it. Here's the sample from Infil's Glossary. So to do the firearm whip, you first have to be moving. You then hold down left trigger, and when you let go of the left stick, you'll do a push. You can then push the right trigger and the left stick again to initiate a run, all while the left trigger is still held down. And there you go, firearm whipping. I haven't gotten used to this one yet because negative edging on an analog stick is tricky, but if you want to try it, then there you go. And for the last trick, we have the weapon delay cancel. I already said this in my previous video that you can alternate weapon attacks and pushing for more frequent combat action. Well, if you time it right, you can instead remove your weapon's delay outright. What you do is press the push button during a weapon attack, but at a very specific time so as the push doesn't actually come out. Do it just right and you can attack again right away with your weapon. The execution of this trick is the same as in keyboard and mouse actually, it's just really all about timing. What I want to add however is that 1, it's not about when you press the push button, and 2, it's not about how fast you mash. Retanaru has it right that you have to do the push right at the tail end, but it's not the press that you have to time right, it's the release. In other words, the negative edge. Yup, there's that term again. Do a weapon attack, hold push, then let go at just the right time, and you've removed the weapon delay. The timing itself is pretty tight. Personally, I'm only semi-consistent. If you let go too early, you'll get the weapon delay, and if you let go too late, you'll do a push. Feel free to figure out the timing yourself because your weapon swing speed has a lot of factors. But how many frames before the end of an attack you need to let go of the push input is the same. But if you try it, mashing does still work. And my guess as to why is because you're overlaying multiple button releases, therefore giving you a better chance to hit the cancel window. If you will mash to do this trick, I recommend stopping your mash right at the end to lessen the chance of a push going through instead. And clearly, most of these tricks are possible due to bugs in the game. Might get fixed in Build 42, might not, who knows. What I can say about them is that they're fun and satisfying to do. And to me, that's all that matters really. And maybe they could become a feature instead. I know that bringing this up will cause contention from those that don't like the idea of abusing glitches, but these tricks can be done to no detriment to other players. Mostly at least, I don't do PvP. And I will say this, if not for bugs like these, we wouldn't have Street Fighter combos, or Devil May Cry juggles, or the homing briefcase in Hitman. To close out the video, we take a look at things you can't do on a controller. And here's the list. Open the survival guide, debug options, server options, toggle PvP, take a screenshot, manual floor attacks, push to talk, and chat. As you can see, a lot of these are online multiplayer exclusive actions. And seeing as more than 90% of Zomboid players only do solo, I imagine these shouldn't be much of an issue. So, are you gonna try out controller now? If you do, how's your experience? Tell me in the comments. Thank you for the 1216 subscribers I have thus far. I'd be really happy if you added to that number too. Thanks for watching until the end, I hope you have a lovely day. See you next video.